Hi, I'm Dr. Todd Lizon from Lifestyle Integration, and in this video we're going to address the question of how long does it take to heal or get better from a chronic degenerative problem, or put another way, how long does a nutritional balancing program take to help you get better? And the answer to the question is that it really unfortunately varies. It depends. It depends on how unwell someone is, how long they've been sick, those sorts of variables. But I can say this. For most people, within a few weeks or within a couple or several months, they do start to notice positive changes with respect to various symptoms that they have. But the reality is, for many people, it actually can take years. And I don't say that very lightly, because I can understand that can be deflating for a lot of people when they hear that it can take that long. But we do need to be realistic about expectations and realistic about how unwell some of us actually are. So what I've done is put together a fascinating case study of an individual over a period of 3.5 years, where we tracked his progress with the use of 7 hair tissue mineral analysis that I'm actually going to show you. In this case study, you're going to see a series of 7 hair tissue mineral analysis that took place over a period of about 3.5 years. And this particular gentleman presented in late 2011 with a series of health concerns that included muscular weakness, fatigue, anxiety, problems handling stress, some neuralgia issues, soreness, blurred vision, a couple of vision issues. He had a fair few symptoms that were going on when he first presented, and that's not uncommon for people that seek our help. What's also not uncommon for people that seek our help is that they usually have a series of questions. They're trying to find out if we're going to be able to help them and how long it takes. And I'm just going to read out some of the email questions that he had sent, because it's quite relevant to trying to understand how long a nutritional balancing program might take. And he says he's been undergoing treatment from a naturopath and TCM practitioner over the course of the past 3 or so years, at some considerable cost, I might add. And whilst there's been some improvement in my condition, I'm frustrated by the fact that I seem to be marking time and not getting answers. I'm convinced there's an underlying issue which as yet has not been uncovered or treated. It's a great question, and this case study is going to show you exactly that by the time we get to the 7th hair mineral analysis. Another question that he asked in a different email, he says, whilst I'm keen to obtain a fix and can see merit in your program, I'm exercising a degree of caution in signing up for yet another course of treatment that entails a long-term monetary commitment. I've had promises from practitioners in the past of a quick resolution to my ills, but after considerable time and expense, it seems that all I'm doing is contributing to the practitioner's retirement fund. Again, a great question, and you can see what he's trying to do here. He's trying to get an idea of, can we help him and how long it takes. And the last question that he wrote down here is that, or statement that I'm going to read out to you, is that he says, I've read elsewhere that a nutritional balancing program can take up to 18 months. Is this your experience? The short answer is, you can't say. Some programs are going to be shorter than that, some are going to be longer than that. As you're about to see here, I'm going to show you something that's been going on over the last 3.5 years. And while this case study might not be typical, it is something that you need to be aware of, because it's not exactly atypical either. So let's have a look at this first hair tissue mineral analysis. And what you can see here is, the main thing I want you to see here is that he is in a slow oxidation pattern. And you can see that when you look at the levels of calcium and magnesium here. And when those two are generally higher than the sodium and the potassium over here, that represents a slow oxidation pattern. And the other thing I just want to mention on this particular first hair mineral analysis is, if you notice his level of copper here, that it's absolutely normal or low normal. And this particular gentleman, you see, does have a copper issue. And in his emails, that's what actually got him on to us in the first place. He'd done a urine challenge test that showed mercury and copper. And then in this diagram here on the right for toxic metals, you can see that he's showing very few toxic metals. That level of aluminium is very common, and that's a low normal of what we'll see in most people. The main point I want to put out here is that he is shut down, he's burnt out, he has very little energy or reserves in the body because of this slow oxidation, and you can also see his nutrient levels that I'm showing here at least are quite low. And with his toxic metals, he's showing what's called poor eliminator patterns. eliminating toxic metals is hard work, and if you don't have the energy or vitality in your body in the first place, you will not eliminate toxic metals and chemicals. Those are the first things that I wanted to just point out on this first hair mineral analysis chart. If we now take a look at his second chart, and I left the lab number on all of these, obviously removed his name. I left the lab number on so that you can see that it is an actual series of legitimate hair tissue analysis from the same person. And I'll point out here, you can see down at the bottom here where I've highlighted, those are the previous test results that you'll see correlate to the slide that we had before. And then these are the current levels. So now you can see that he's still in slow oxidation, where the calcium and the magnesium are higher than the sodium and the potassium. His coppers went up by 0.3, it looks like, or 0.2. And his toxic metal profile is virtually identical. In other words, he's gone from November till April, and for all intents and purposes looks like he has accomplished very little. Now, in the process of this period of time, he did report some improvement in symptoms, but really not much. However, he was committed to the program. We'd answered his questions. He understood what was involved, and he kept on going with the program. And I'll say now that this particular gentleman was very, very good at applying all the aspects of the program, not just the easy bits or not just the parts that best suited him. He did the complete program and was very consistent and methodical in doing so. If we now look at the third test, and this third test we've moved from April of 2012 and we're now in October of 2012. And here you're going to see again a very similar pattern. Still slow oxidation, his magnesium hardly moved, his calcium hardly moved, his sodium and potassium came up a little bit, which is good. That's a little bit of increased vitality. But for all intents and purposes, you can see his copper is almost the same. Here his toxic metals did rise a little bit with arsenic and aluminium over here, but not to any great extent. So again, now we're looking at the third test, and it would, for all intents and purposes, seem like not a whole lot has been happening. If we now move to the fourth test, we start to see further changes. Now what we're seeing with this gentleman is what's called a 4 lows pattern, where these first 4 minerals here, calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium, are all below the ideal level. And that can be interpreted to mean a few different things. It's typically looked at as a bit of a burnout or a rebuilding stage. But again, you can see he's depleted, not a lot of energy. We look over here at his toxic metals with arsenic and aluminium. And again, aluminium's quite low for most people, although arsenic is starting to come out a little bit at this point in time. So this is his fourth test, and you can see now we've gone from late 2011 to mid 2013. We're now coming up on almost, well, that's about a year and a half, approaching 2 years that he's been on this program, and he's not seeing that much change. You have to really understand this program and have a certain level of, I don't think faith is the right word, certainly not blind faith, but you have to have a certain element of confidence that you're doing the right things by addressing the root cause, removing the interference, and supporting the body with what it needs. So now we move on to the fifth test, and you can see that this one was done in March of 2014. It's been some time now that he's been on the program, and the results here are very similar to what they were on the fourth test. Really not a lot of change, not a lot of budging in his symptoms, but he's still plodding along and doing everything that he needs to do. On the sixth test, we start to notice a little bit of change. If you notice, the calcium and the magnesium now are just gently creeping up, but for all intents and purposes, he's still in the 4 lows pattern. Now let's point out a couple of things here. He started this program in November of 2011, and this is now showing September of 2014. That's coming up on 3 years that he's been working on things. Most people, I think if we're brutally honest here, would start to doubt the program as if they'd start to doubt if this is ever going to work, or if they're throwing, good money after bad money, or they have any number of different thoughts in their head that we need to be addressing. However, to his credit, he kept on going, and it's a very good thing he did, because I'm going to show you the 7th hair mineral analysis now, and you'll see what's happened. Take a look at this. Finally, After 3 years of being on a program and being diligent and doing all the little things that he had to do, we start to see the change. He's broken out of this 4 lows pattern that you can see here. His sodium and potassium levels have come right up, indicating an increased level of vitality and energy and function with respect to the thyroid and the adrenals and a few other things. And notice over here the copper level. It finally started to come out. So what you're seeing here when you see a high level of copper is that this copper is now being dumped out of the body, and we're seeing this increased level of copper in the tissues as it's coming out of the body. So that's a good thing, because we need to see this copper getting dumped out. And if you come across and look over here now at the toxic metals, notice his aluminium is at its highest level now, and that is also a good thing, because he's now eliminating or pushing the aluminium out of his body because he has the energy. And most significantly, let's look at this level here of cadmium. Cadmium is a very toxic metal. It is very potent. It's a neurotoxin. It affects the body in many adverse ways. And if you look at this level of 0.331, look at the top of the chart where it's at 0.1. This level of cadmium is 3 times off the top of this chart. And I can tell you that this gentleman is currently having symptoms, but at least he now understands that the symptoms that he's having is a result of this copper and cadmium and aluminium coming out of the system. And he's much happier now that he can see what's happening and understand why he's having these symptoms. And I can also tell you he was starting to dump out nickel as well at a fairly high level. So what can we make out of all of this? What's the logic? What's the sort of conclusions that we can come to by looking at this case study of 7 hair mineral analysis over a period of 3.5 years? Well, the first conclusion we can come to is that it takes time. As individuals, we have what we'll call many layers of adaptation, meaning something that happened to us at age 12 that wasn't addressed is a layer in the body. And in this situation, this gentleman's 60 years old. Let's just say he's got 60 layers of time and things that have happened. And we're now having to peel back each individual layer to get to the root causes of the problem. And in his case, for a few reasons, it took a little bit longer to peel back these superficial layers, build up his energy so that he had the ability to deal with this. But he's now there, and it will be interesting to track his progress over time. The second thing that we can come to conclusions here is that we can't predict when things are going to happen. The body works in its own wisdom, and we need to just simply support it and remove the interference. Some people take longer than others to build up the energy and the vitality to deal with things. I would not say that this is a typical result. However, it's not atypical either. Younger people typically will do better, sooner and earlier. But there's another factor that needs to be taken into account. And these are what I'm referring to as critical factors. This is the third conclusion, is that there's often critical factors that need to be addressed. And by this I'm referring to stress. Remember, stress can be physical, emotional, or chemical. And if someone has a stress that they can't, or more interestingly, won't address, it will often slow or stop their progress. And I see this most often in these 4 lows and burnout situations. People they want to get better, but they won't get rid of some stresses. Now, we can't say for sure in this individual's situation what this critical factor was that might have made a difference, but we have some speculation that it has to do with his retirement. About a year prior to this last test, he retired. And there's some speculation that that might be a critical factor as to the stress sort of lifted off of his shoulders. He was able to build some energy, and then he was able to go through this elimination. And the fourth conclusion we can come to is that this entire program needs to be adhered to. I alluded to this earlier, not little bits and pieces. You have to do the diet, you have to do the lifestyle factors, you have to drink the water, you have to do the saunas, you have to use the supplements. The entire program needs to be adhered to, and when we adhere to the entire program, the program works. I hope you've enjoyed this case study. It's a real eye-opener, I believe. Healing takes time. And notice with this particular individual that he's starting now to eliminate his toxic metals and chemicals, and his healing journey is going to continue over the next number of months and possibly even years. For more information to know about exactly what we did with them and what our program consists of, take a look at some of the links on the left, and you'll also note that we're able to work with you remotely no matter where in the world you are. Of course, if you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, you can do that on the top left. And for a free ebook chapter on even more about how we work with people, click the link below, which will take you to our website, and you can enter your information into the little yellow box there, and you'll get the free ebook chapter immediately, as well as some newsletters from us every couple of weeks. Until next time, keep well.